August teases us with hot days we wish were over. Then, all too soon, we wish summer could just go on a little bit longer.
Welcome to the Garden Angelus, where we talk about flowers, veggies, and all the best dirt. I'm Carol Michael from Indianapolis, Indiana, where I have a suburban garden measured in square feet.
And I'm Dee Nash from Guthrie, Oklahoma, where I garden on several acres out in the country. Too darn many.
We call ourselves Garden Angelists because we are evangelists for gardening. We love gardening and we want others to love it too.
Yes, we do. And we aren't afraid to spill the beans and tell all of our gardening secrets, the good, the bad, and even the ugly. But that's enough of who, what, when, where. Let's move on to this week's episode. Hello, Carol.
Hello, Dee. Happy days to you.
Happy days to you too. We're recording this on a Monday.
That's right. On Monday, August the 23rd. Oh my gosh, Dee. I got good, bad, and ugly again.
Okay, tell me the good first. I need some good news.
I got lots of tomatoes. Lots of tomatoes. Right. They're all
I figured you would.
All at once. That's good.
That is good.
The bad is those stupid mimosa webworms are back in the honey locust, and we talked about that. But kind of the good side is I don't think they're as bad as they were last year.
Right.
So I'm pleased that they're just kind of taking care of themselves. And then the ugly, hot.
Yeah, it's hot.
It's going to be in the 90s all this week. And so my lovely perennial pansies have been summering over. They're all kind of curling up and going dormant. So I hope the cold weather brings them out again. We'll see.
Well, here it's hot. I wouldn't say it's real ugly, but it's pretty hot. And I realized something about those stupid army worms.
What was that, Dee?
The stupid army worms eat ornamental grasses. And so I was out looking at my grasses in my garden and I was like, why do those look so weird and thin? Army worms. So I've been squishing those babies with abandon. And I figured out a good way to get them because when the ornamental grass comes up,
yeah,
you take the grass and you pat it and kind of lean it on side. And their natural tendency is to drop and curl up. And I just grab those babies and I throw them in water or squish them or whatever I feel like doing. I know.
You're kind
of grossed out.
All your tensions and aggressions and, I got to do something. And you do it to the army worms. That's good.
Yeah, it's a good thing. And somebody asked me, do they turn into a beautiful moth? And I said, no, Google it. They turn into something ugly. And so not that I think we should kill ugly things, but in this case, yes, I do.
Oh gosh. Anyway, okay. I've got some nice quotes for us to calm us down. We're going to talk about some pretty flowers. We got some good stuff today. So I'm going to start us with a nice quote so you can calm down from your army worm.
I'm okay.
Okay. August brings katydids, elderberries, blackberry pie, and goldenrod. August is just another 31 days of concentrated summer, but it certainly gets one in condition to appreciate fall when it comes. Good old August. We'll take it, and some of us will like it. By Hal Borland, who is an American author, journalist, and naturalist, born in 1900, passed away in 1978.
Well, I think that's hilarious. And actually in Oklahoma, we've had a good August. Well, I got another inch of rain over the weekend, believe it or not. But this week we're back to real August, which is 97, 97, 97, 97.
I think ours is like 92, 93, 92, 93. But I got 0.71 inches of rain. I think it was Friday evening. A big old thunderstorm came up out of nowhere. So anyway, let's talk about our flower, which is allium, which we've talked about before, but we decided we're going to talk about it again.
Well, we're going to talk about a specific allium. We're going to talk about millennium because we mentioned it on last week's podcast and decided we didn't have time to talk about it. I would encourage anybody who wants to grow alliums in Oklahoma to grow one of the types like millennium. They're a smaller allium. They don't get very tall,
right?
But they love our heat. They don't mind our too warm nights like other large alliums do. They were 2018's perennial plant of the year, and it's just a great plant. Deer resistant. I mean, deer don't touch it because it's an allium, and it makes cute little flowers, and it spreads nicely, and bees love it, and so do butterflies. Why wouldn't you want to grow this?
I do not know why you wouldn't want to grow it. The other thing that's nice about it is if you grow those big, like drumstick alliums that grew and have a great big flower in the spring, if you look down, those leaves look ugly and, they turn ugly quick. And allium,
they get big.
Yeah.
Big.
And they start to die back, those leaves, right away. But allium millennium, I use it to border several flower beds, and it just makes a nice border plant. If you like that, I like that look of sort of like creates a border that kind of puts everything inside of that. And so that's sort of a nice little border. And then inside could be a messy mess, which is a messy mess.
So it has a little strappy leaf, and it's a pretty leaf, and it's very attractive in spring. It's very attractive all summer. It starts blooming. It blooms a very long time. Yep. And mine are in my front border that faces the street with the pink muhly grass, which of course they don't bloom at the same time, but that doesn't matter. So they bloom before the pink muhly, and the deer won't come near them. And that's an area of my garden where I have a lot of deer pressure because it's right on the edge of my land. So I think they're just a great deal. And now there are a bunch of new ones that have come out. And we looked at Walter's Gardens because they've created a bunch of different, I started to say alliums, a bunch of different alliums, and they're all slightly different, but they're all kind of similar.
They're a big wholesale grower, and that's like my greenhouse gets a lot of plants from Walter's, but they're serendipity. And turns out, Dee, that I have serendipity. It's out.
You do?
It's out in front. And I would say it's taller. It's taller than Millennium, but otherwise is blooming at about the same time. And it's very nice.
There's another one called Blue Eddy, which they describe it as pinwheel-like rosettes of blue-gray to gray-green foliage. So the foliage is more blue. And so they say it looks like swirling eddies of water. I mean, bear in mind, they want people to buy this plant. So I don't know what it looks like really, but it looked pretty in the picture.
That's true. And then I bought one, and this isn't a Walter's one, I don't think, but I was just, I've got the pink garden on the side of the garage. And so if it's got a pink flower, it goes in the pink garden.
Okay.
So I was at another garden center, and they had an allium. It was called Summer Peekaboo, and it was supposed to be pinker. So I thought,
is it?
Well, I would call it pink leaning, but it's still sort of on the purple side. I'm like, well, I'm going to leave it there because there's not much else blooming. Well, there's a bunch of echinaceas blooming, but I thought I'm going to leave it there for now and just let it grow on and see. It's something that'll bloom late in the summer. But here's the thing about these alliums. I bought one container of them, and then when you plant it, it's got multiple bulbs in it, little bulbs. And so you break those open and you plant one bulb along, and you'll be surprised at how soon you'll have a whole row of allium, because they tend to multiply, I think, quickly. They fill out. And so
they do fill out quickly. I have never done that. But yes, I would say that mine bulked up really quickly.
Because the Millennium that I have, and by the way, Millennium is spelled with one N because when
they messed up.
The breeder that registered it with one N. So it is a perennial with a misspelling to normal people.
Which kind of wears us out, but that's okay. And so the thing we also love about these is bees and skippers love them.
They do.
And they cover them all the time. And it's beautiful. And there was another one that's out called Lavender Bubbles, and it blooms later in the season. So if you wanted to stagger your bloom, you might try it. And then there's also Medusa. I only have Millennium. And then we were also going to talk about...
Well, wait a minute. Let's talk about Medusa. Whenever a flower name has the name Medusa, it means it's like wild looking, so I would think that would be a bigger, looser head or something, because Medusa had all those like wild hair stuff.
Snakes.
That's what it was. So it's just like, don't expect Medusas to be a nice, tidy flower if they give it that variety name. Just saying. That's a tip.
Probably true. I'm not going to buy Medusa today, so I'm okay. They're great borders for your flower garden. So we're just going to suggest those. And I would love to hear if any of our listeners also grow any of these, because it's always fun to hear how things go in other people's gardens, right?
It is. And the other day you were talking about the bees and the butterflies and the skippers. on this serendipity out front. There were bees all over it. So I took a picture. It's going to be the basis of a blog post for tomorrow. Just telling you.
Good deal. I need to write a blog post. I did get my newsletter out, but no blog post this week.
Yeah.
So we're going to talk about chives really quickly because chives are also an allium. They're an edible allium. I suppose, you could eat millennium too, maybe, but
I wouldn't.
I wouldn't. Anyway, chives are delicious. Carol has them. They spread a lot in her garden. They don't reseed a lot here, but I also deadhead them when they're done blooming. And mine go to seed pretty fast because of the honeybees. So I get in there and deadhead them really good and then just go on. But you said they reseed in your garden really bad.
They do, but I wasn't very good about deadheading them.
And then years and years ago, about 1,000 years ago, I bought garlic chives from a guy who's selling herbs. And that was one of the biggest mistakes in my garden life. I have garlic chives and I have done everything to get rid of garlic chives. I've even sprayed the big R on them once.
Oh my.
Because they're not in my vegetable garden. They're in my other garden. And the big R got rid of them, but they came back. And I noticed they're getting ready to bloom right now. And I'm like, oh, you can dig them out, but they spread. And I would suggest no one get garlic chives in my climate if you haven't already had that happen to you.
And the other thing I would say, like Millennium and some of these, and maybe these others, but Millennium is supposed to be reluctant to set seed that's viable. So you don't get a lot of reseeding of Millennium all over your garden.
No, I've never had it reseed at all. And that's interesting too, because a lot of times if a plant is reluctant to set seed or whatever, it is not a good nectar plant a lot of times. But in this particular case, Millennium must be one heck of a nectar plant because it attracts so many pollinators. It just doesn't set a lot of seed, if at all. So that's a good thing too, because you don't want it spreading everywhere like garlic chives.
No. All right. I think we've exhausted that. Yes, please.
The change always comes about mid-August, and it always catches me by surprise. I mean, the day when I know that summer is fraying at the edges, that September isn't far off, and fall is just over the hill or up the valley. That's good old Hal Borland again.
I love what he said, that August is summer fraying at the edges. I love that.
Yeah, that's true, because it's still trying to give its last hurrah, but before long, we're all going to be wearing sweaters. It doesn't feel like that, but it will happen.
So the other day I was at the post office, and I saw this older lady coming in, and she had on this T-shirt that said, "Don't farm naked, plant cover crops." And I just started laughing. Hilarious. I didn't say, "Hey, where'd you get that?" But apparently there's an organization in Iowa that made these shirts up to help people think about using cover crops, which in agriculture is a big deal.
It's a very big deal.
Number one, it puts nutrients back into the soil, improves the soil structure because you're adding organic matter. The roots can break up hard pan soil. And also it keeps soils from eroding away, because if you clear off a farm field in the fall and just leave it, the wind goes whipping across the plains and there goes all your dirt.
Right. Well, and also there's been a tendency in farming for years and years to just put on commercial fertilizers, right?
Right.
And then you just till in and go on. I mean, there's more to it than that, but they're trying to get people to stop doing that, because some cover crops also bring in pollinators in the fall and feed pollinators. And so the pollinators, if you have, I keep trying to tell this to people. I'm doing this pollinator talk at Bustani Plant Farm in September. And I keep trying to tell people that a garden in balance is a happier garden.
It is.
And so
it makes for a happier gardener.
It does, because you have to do less. So in my grass, the armyworms, for example, were eaten by birds, crows, in fact. The crows have been very happy at my house, and it's been fun to watch them. But other people wouldn't want to do that. They might want to spray, for example. So in this case, it's the same idea. Cover crops keep your soil from being naked.
That's right. And so the question is, in your home vegetable garden, when you start to clear off plants that are no longer producing, if you don't want to plant other vegetables there, should you plant a cover crop? And the answer, of course, is a very straightforward, maybe not.
Maybe. Mm-hmm. Depends on how you garden.
If you have a raised bed and you brought in soil and you're putting leaf mold and things like that on it, you may not need a cover crop because, quite frankly, a cover crop can be sort of a pain in the butt because
you got to till it in, or
you got to work it in somehow, or remove it at some point and work the stuff in. But if you feel like your soil is just like and your crops were like which is a very technical botanical term, I know.
Yes, I love those.
You might want to think about planting some cover crops. And there are some basic ones out there. Botanical Interest has a whole bunch of them that they will sell you. And they'll put on the packet, like some of them you really want to plant like 8 weeks before frost. Some of them 4 weeks before frost. Some of them will be killed off when you have a frost. Some of them will live over and germinate again in the spring. And so you kind of have to look and say, what would work for my garden? And there's things like buckwheat, common buckwheat.
Some of the clovers, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Hairy vetch cover crop.
Which hairy vetch is all over Oklahoma because it actually has been used as a cover crop by farmers for years. And you see it in hedgerows. And
some of these, they say, well, we can't really sell that in this state or that state because
they can be invasive.
Right.
I grow crimson clover I grow it for my bees. And
somebody ought to write a song about crimson clover.
Yeah, maybe crimson and clover.
Yeah, there you go. Something like that.
So crimson clover, I will just say this about it. It is really beautiful. In fact, I grew it came up last spring, and it's in my garden, it's in my lower pasture, it's an early bloomer. And my daughter, Megan, was over and she was like, what is that gorgeous red flower down there? And I said,
that's right. She wanted
clover.
It.
Yeah, she wanted to grow it. Well, she wanted to grow white clover in her lawn, and people thought she was crazy. So she is, and by the way, she is going to grow white clover in her backyard. Anyhow, crimson clover is very beautiful. So if you want to grow something pretty that is liked by pollinators, that's a good one.
And then there are some peas and oats and actually faba beans that can be used as cover crops. And they, along with like the clover, they fix nitrogen in the soil.
Right, because
does the clover fix nitrogen in the soil?
Yes, clover does fix nitrogen in the soil. That's why they used to keep it. That's why it was part of seed mixes back in the old days.
Yes. And so I would say, so we've given a very definitive, it depends answer. And we're going to provide a link to Botanical Interest in case you're interested in any of those cover crops. And like Dee said, some of them are really pretty.
Mm-hmm. Some are pretty, but it is kind of complicated because you have to plant them at certain times of the year.
Right.
And so you got to read the package. And I'll be honest, I'm not that dedicated a gardener. Some people are, and go them.
Well, like I said, and I didn't get it done last week, I am going to just throw out the rest of my green bean seeds and let them grow and then just work them in with a little pitchfork. So
yeah, it won't hurt anything.
So we'll provide a link. Botanical Interest has actually a pretty nice article out there. And then, of course, they have seeds for sale because that's what they do. They sell seeds.
That's their job.
All right. Onward. I'll do this quote.
Yeah, it's your turn.
August is one of the hottest months of the northern year. So hold your breath and see that the fan is in order. It is also one of the longest months, and sometimes it seems even longer. And guess who that's by again?
Hal Borland.
Yeah, I picked all Hal Borland quotes. I don't know why. It's like I found the first one and I thought, I wonder if he has some other good quotes. And I don't know anything about him. He's a naturalist, wrote nature books, out west, blah, blah, blah. We should look him up and see more. But
he might be some really terrible person.
But
no, we don't think Hal's a terrible person. We're just kidding.
On the bookshelf is a new book I got called Lessons from Plants by Rhonda Montgomery. And I'm holding it up.
Yes, and I did not get this one, but you did.
Yes. And so it is Dr. Montgomery is a foundation professor in the departments of biochemistry and molecular biology at the Michigan State University. And I listened to a little bit of a podcast or something with her. And she says a foundations professor means that you have gotten to such high esteem that the university gives you money to do experiments that normally nobody would give you a grant for. So you kind of have free reign to do whatever you want. Go, Brenda.
Sounds fun to me. Go her.
Anyway, she has a research group, and this is going to sound all sciencey. They investigate how photosynthetic organisms adapt to changes in their environment. And photosynthetic organisms is obviously plants.
I was going to say they're plants.
Yes.
Photosynthesis.
A few weeks ago, GardenCom, that we are both members of, gave Dr. Montgomery a Cynthia Westcott Scientific Writing Award because she helps kind of explain plants to regular folk like you and I.
Which is cool. And that award, just for people who don't know, Carol was the person who came up with the idea for that award and presented it to GardenCom several years ago, and they ran with it. And some very esteemed colleagues in the scientific world have gotten the award each year based upon their work. And I love that intersection between science and research and explaining it to regular gardeners.
Right. And Cynthia Westcott was like the first person to get a PhD in plant physiology at Cornell back in before World War II. And she wrote several books, and The Gardener's Bug Book, which is an old classic, is by Cynthia Westcott. And she wrote books on roses. But yes, the idea is these are scientists who help explain gardening or plant and things like that to the rest of us.
Which is very cool.
So this is her first book. And so when I started reading this book, it's very clear to me that since I was a student in horticulture, there has been so much research done to show how plants sense and react to their environment.
Right.
And not just soil and light, but other plants around them, how they react to the plants and
how they send out alarms to insects.
Yeah. When an insect like hits on them. Yeah. All kinds of stuff. So she then, Dr. Montgomery, another one of her passions is teaching leadership and life lessons and that sort of thing. And so she relates some of the lessons they've learned from plants to people. And there were a couple of them that I thought were really, I'll call thought-provoking. First of all, some of our readers are really interested in Three Sisters Gardens, and she has a ton of information about the Three Sisters Garden and what it teaches us. But here's the other thing, and we don't think about this. When a plant has a difficult time, what's the first thing you think of, Dee?
When a plant has a difficult time?
Yeah, when it's not growing well, you think, oh, is the soil bad? Is it not getting enough light? Does it need more water?
Enough water? Stuff like that. Yeah.
We never say, oh, that's just a bad plant. So why
sometimes they're bad plants?
Well, but why when people struggle, we think, what's wrong with this person? They just need to get over it. And it's their environment, their food, are they getting, proper nutrition? So we think first about what's wrong with this person. We ought to think about what's going on around this person. What's the environment? Because that's the first thing we think about plants is what's going on around this plant? Why isn't it growing well? And so I thought that was a really great lesson that she brought forward in this book. So
I think teachers do that with kids. I think teachers are the first people who look at children and go, okay, what's wrong that's making this child not able to learn, for example?
Exactly. Instead of saying, this kid's dumb.
Because they aren't dumb. Exactly. A lot of times there's things that are going on in their lives they have no control over.
Right. But anyway, that's a good book. And it's not.
Sounds good.
It looks like a big, long book. And Brenda is a scientist. So there's 150 pages of really interesting stuff. And then 75 pages of notations and references and cross references. I mean, this book is well researched. She's done her homework.
She's a researcher.
Exactly. So anyway, it's a sweet little book, and it's small and make a nice gift for a gardener. It'd be great. So anyway, that's our book. It is Lessons from Plants by Beronda Montgomery.
Dr. Montgomery.
Dr. Montgomery. Now you do the dirt because you can't. I'm like, how'd you get that? I didn't get that.
I don't know. I got sent. I was asked. I got sent. I sound like I'm an idiot. Okay. I was sent these no sweat liners. No sweat is one word. We will link to it. They're for garden hats. Actually, they were used in sports first for people who are golfing or doing other sports where you have to be outside and you don't want sweat running down in your face. Well, I do a lot of activities that involve sweat. And I guess that's why I got them, because I'm a beekeeper, and believe me, you sweat under that veil because it is hot. And these are just, they're liners and they attract the sweat and they hold on to it. And then they're disposable. So you can get rid of them. They're just moisture wicking material. And so there's no like stuffing. They're real thin. So they aren't going to make your hat fit funny. They're awesome and they work. So I decided that could be our dirt this weekend, is that it's just this really great technology that helps absorb sweat and keep it out of your eyes when you're gardening or when you're beekeeping or when you're sporting. I don't sport much, but when you sport.
Well, I like that you said they have patented sweat lock technology to absorb sweat. Yeah, that's what they call it.
So I don't know anything. I don't know why it works, but there's all that moisture wicking material now that you can wear that a lot of athletes wear, and they work. So I just wanted people to know about them.
Okay. Well, I think I'm going to get me some.
And they're not expensive. So yeah.
Not that I sweat. I glisten when I go outside. I just glisten.
Yeah, I sweat. I sweat like a big dog, but whatever.
I did stick another quote in here.
I noticed that. You want me to do it?
Yes. Yeah. It's a big setup for my big story.
You fight dandelions all weekend, and late Monday afternoon, there they are, pert as all get out, in full and gorgeous bloom, pretty as can be, thriving as only dandelions can in the face of adversity. How Borland.
Isn't that truth?
Yeah, it is. I think it's funny though. I'm not going to take away from your story, but I think people used to be really obsessed with dandelions.
They did.
There's a lot of dandelion quotes out there. And of all the weeds I have to deal with, the dandelions are the least of my problems. I have some other weed I need to show you a picture of. Maybe we can talk about it next week. Anyway, tell us your dandelion story.
So I don't know if I told this story on the podcast before, but at the Garden
You have not.
At the GardenCon virtual conference, they had a story slam and you can tell a story. So I told the story of the dandelion, and I'll keep it kind of short because we're running out of time. So I'm mowing the grass one day and around the corner by the spruce tree, and I am looking, eyeballed a flower straight ahead at a dandelion. And I'm like, what is that? I mean, it can't be a dandelion. It's too tall. So I came back around and it's like, that dandelion is like at eye level. So I finished mowing and I went out and I thought, I cut that thing off, and that dandelion was like 33 inches tall. And
That's a big dandelion.
I was so excited, Dee. I thought, I am going into the Guinness Book of World Records. Who else has a dandelion that tall? So I come inside and I'll tell you, this is the rabbit hole. The Guinness Book of World Records is a rabbit hole. Even in gardening, there are so many records, and there is a record for the tallest dandelion.
Really?
Yes, I did not even come close at 33 inches.
I mean, did somebody like specially grow this dandelion?
No, I think it's like you see something and you're like, is that a world record? And you have to get somebody to attest to it besides just.
Yeah, it's hard.
So anyway, these people had measured their dandelion when they found it. 77 inches. And then Dee's just made this funny face. I'm going to have to maybe I'll snip that video. I don't know. But they had some lawn care guy and somebody else came and measured it once it had started to dry, and it was 70 inches. And that's the world record tallest dandelion.
So you didn't get to have it. I'm sorry you missed out on your world record.
No, but the rabbit hole is I'm going to, pour through the Guinness Book of World Records to see if what other gardening related world record I can set.
Yeah, you go for it.
You do.
What else are you going to do in the garden this week?
So this week, other than that, I'm going to be hunkering down because it's going to be in the low 90s. I'll keep watering, keep picking tomatoes. And I'm actually thinking that probably by the weekend, there's a couple of houseplants. So I'd go ahead and just start moving them inside because you don't really want them to get too cool too fast. I don't know.
So, yeah, I don't think so.
It's that time to start thinking about
it. It's that time. Yeah.
And you know how it is with us. We think, I ought to do that. And then like 3 weeks later, we finally do it.
Yeah, maybe if we've got time.
What are you doing?
I am going to pick peppers. I have a lot of peppers right now. My tomatoes are about done. There's a few left, and I just keep ignoring them because I'm tired of tomatoes. And I also have okra. And so I'll pick my okra because okra, as long as it's hot, just keeps coming every day.
That's right.
I grew a new one called like Indian Flame or Candle Fire. That was the name of it. I do not like this okra. it gets tough really fast. So I'm disappointed in it. I'm going back to my old fashioned hill country or whichever one it is that's red next year because candle fire is ugly and it's supposed to be pretty. So what else am I going to do? Pick peppers. I'm going to roast the peppers, put them in freezer bags and stick them in my freezer. Probably chop them up first and use them like I do in the winter time. And then my friend Debbie, who's a listener, she texted me the other day and was like, I have too many peppers. What pepper recipes do you use? And I made a really good, it's a chili relleno casserole. And so I put some pictures up on Instagram on my story, I think. And Debbie also made the same casserole and she said hers was really good too. So search for chili relleno casserole if you have extra peppers. That's it.
Very good. Well, we want to thank you for listening to The Gardenangelist. If you like our podcast, please tell your friends about us. Also hit the subscribe button so you don't miss anything.
And if you listen to Apple Podcasts, we'd love a 5-star review. That helps us get noticed by others. Could you also share our podcast with your gardening friends? Word of mouth is still the best way to get the word out there.
Yes, and be sure and check out our show notes for links for more information about today's topics, plus links to our own websites. And if you want to help support us, use the affiliate links. If you buy something after clicking through on them, we earn a small commission and it costs you nothing.
It was lovely to chat with all of you over the Garden Gate today. Bye until next week.
Bye, everybody.